Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining today. I'd like to seek the blessings of Radha Madhav, Radha Shyam Sundar, Krishna Balaram, Onitai Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, and the assembled Vaishnavas, so that we can continue with the overview of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto. Today is the 13th chapter. And this is a wonderful verse from that chapter, number 36.
Teham janashram avistet putima sedo napashyati yato adhyakama swarupam devadapitam atadeva vashapetam vaso yatha parikram madira mandada. Translation: just as a drunken man does not notice if he is wearing his coat or shirt, similarly, one who is perfect in self-realization, who has thus achieved his eternal identity, does not notice whether the temporary body is sitting or standing. Indeed, if by God's will the body is finished, or if by God's will he obtains a new body, self-realized soul does not notice, just as a drunken man does not notice the situation of his outward dress.
So unusually, Bhagavatam is comparing the self-realized soul with the drunken man. Very unusual comparison. But effectively, what the message is that because the self-realized soul knows that the body is a temporary dressing, when it changes, he doesn't notice, just like the drunkard doesn't notice if he's wearing a shirt or a coat. So very interesting. So this is obviously a very high level of consciousness, because unfortunately in this world, most people are very body conscious as opposed to self-conscious. So let's see the context of this verse. This chapter is entitled Hams Avatar Answers the Questions of the Sons of Brahma. In this chapter, Lord Krishna explains to Uddhav how human beings overwhelmed by sense gratification become bound by the three modes of material nature and how to renounce these modes. So he's continuing with the answers that to the questions of Uddhav, where he asks about the person who lives in this world and can't get out of it. What's the point? Can't get out of this world. And also he's answering the question about how does this self-realized soul renounce? How does the soul renounce the modes, the material effects that it has on him? The Lord then describes how he appeared in the form of Hams before Brahma and the four sages, headed by Sanak, and he revealed to them the various confidential truths, effects of the three modes. Three modes, goodness, passion, ignorance, so Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun, are related to material intelligence, not to the soul. Soul is above. The three modes increase their different influences and prominence. True. Now it's got a whole load of items. So water, I suppose if we are bathing in holy waters like Ganga, that's goodness or even pure goodness. And then just ordinary bath water, that's passion. And if we're looking at dirty water, then that's ignorance. So depending on the type of water we're using can increase our mode. Our association with children, our children, or people in general. So if we associate with those in a mode of passion, goodness, ignorance, and we will develop those traits. The particular place. So if we're in a pub, that's ignorance. If we're in a workplace, that's passion. If we are at home, that can be goodness. If we're in the temple, that can be pure goodness. Time, mornings are regarded to be generally in the mode of goodness, because you're a little bit meditative. Then as the day goes along, you're working hard, passion kicks in, and then very tired in the evening, eat something, go to sleep, ignorance kicks in. activities. So depending on our activities, if we're doing crazy activities like vikarman activities, then sinful activities, that's moral ignorance. If we're doing passionate activities, that's passion. If we're doing pious activity, that's goodness. If we're doing spiritual activity, that's pure goodness. Birth. So depending on which order we have taken birth into, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, will also influence our mode, the mode that we are in. Meditation. If we are meditating and falling asleep, that's ignorance. If we're meditating and thinking about all the duties we have to do in the daytime, that's passion. If we're meditating and trying our best to focus the mind on the soul, supreme soul, that's goodness. And if we're meditating and completely absorbed in Krishna, that's pure goodness. Chanting of mantras. There are mantras, different types of mantras, which some mantras can lead one to ignorance. Perhaps the worship of Kali Mata could go into that category, where the worshipper is actually worshipping to enjoy his own senses. The passion, where you want something from the demigods and you do some prayers, so it's a bit of business-like transaction. So passion kicks in. Goodness is where you want to get to know the Lord, get to know or want him to help in any distress we have. That's goodness. And then pure goodness is where you're completely, again, absorbed in the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, which are non-different from God himself. Purificatory rituals. So if one is, again, using the Vedas to become purified to worship, say, maybe one of the more challenging deities, might cause mode of ignorance to kick in. And if we, again, doing a purification to perform rituals which are karma kanda oriented, then that's going to be passion. If we're doing purificatory activities to worship the Lord, that's goodness. And then, of course, those worship, everything is in pure goodness when it's connected with Shri Krishna. So in that way, these different elements can affect what mode we're in. Rise at least to the mode of goodness. One should conquer the lower modes of passion ignorance by the mode of goodness. And one must surpass the mode of goodness by acting in the transcendental mode of pure goodness. By associating with things in the mode of goodness, one becomes more fully situated in that mode. One has to revive one's direct knowledge of the spirit soul and drive away the illusory identification with the material body and mind caused by the three modes. So this is where knowledge is important. Knowledge is gained by reading the scriptures, associating with devotees. By increasing the mode of goodness, one automatically can understand and practice religious principles. And by such practice, transcendental knowledge is awakened. So at least we should rise to the mode of goodness. Our Guru Maharaj was very keen on us to rise at least to the mode of goodness. Shri Uddhav said, "My dear Krishna, generally human beings know that material life brings great future unhappiness, and still they try to enjoy material life. My dear Lord, how can one in knowledge act just like a dog, an ass, or a goat?" So generally people know, if I do something stupid, I'm going to get punished for it. But why do we still act? Lacking discrimination, one identifies, so Krishna's answer. Lacking discrimination, one identifies with the material body. And consequently, the mode of passion, which produces misery, takes over the mind, which is normally in the mode of goodness. So Krishna answers this a little bit differently in the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna asks a similar question. He says to Krishna, by what force does somebody sin, right? Even though they're trying to be good. And Krishna there answers, it is lust only. Kamesha krodesha, lust only, that drives the living entity to perform sinful activities. So here he's talking about misidentification and constant mode of passion kicking in, producing misery. So in one sense, it is similar because he's talking about the mode of passion. But in the Bhagavad Gita, he's very clear. He identifies the exact issue, which is lust, which is, of course, a product of the mode of passion. As the mind evolves its function of decision and doubt, it creates intolerable hankerings for sense gratification. We want so many nice things to taste, so many nice things to see, smell, touch. It's just unlimited. Unfortunately, persons who are bewildered by the urges of the mode of passion become the slave of their senses, even though they know that the eventual result of their work will be suffering. So this is Krishna's answer, that it is basically because we're trying to satisfy our senses, lacking discrimination, no control. Although the intelligence of a learned person may be bewildered by the modes of passion and ignorance, he should again carefully bring the mind under control. By clearly seeing the contamination of the modes of nature, he does not become attached. So it's important to see which mode we are in. That's why we study the modes of material nature and what mode we are in, so that we can understand, oh, I've got to be careful. A person should be attentive and grave, never lazy or morose. Mastering the yoga procedure of breathing and sitting properly, one should practice fixing the mind on me, on Krishna, at dawn, noon, and sunset. Thus, gradually, the mind should be completely absorbed in the Lord. This is the actual yoga system taught by devotees headed by Sanak Kumar. So, Uddhav further asks, my dear Keshav, at what time and in what form did you instruct the science of yoga to Sanaka, and his brothers? So, because Sanak and the brothers are sons of Brahma. So this is a little confusing for Uddhav. When did you instruct them? Because they're really ancient beings, billions of years old. So how is it that you instructed them? Krishna replies, once the mental sons of Lord Brahma, headed by Sanak, inquired from their father about the difficult subject matter of the supreme goal of yoga. As people's minds are naturally attached to material sense objects, and similarly the sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind, how can a person who desires liberation, who desires to cross over activities of sense gratification, destroy this mutual relationship between sense objects and the mind? So again, similar inquiry to what Uddhav asked a couple of chapters ago. How can we break this chain, this connection between the sense objects, and the mind? Because it's such a strong bond. The sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind. We know that, right? Suddenly a desire enters our mind and we have to have something. If we don't have it, we feel there's something missing in our life. And without it, we pretty much cannot enjoy life. And that is the biggest illusion. That is a big illusion. Okay. So Brahma could not answer the question. So this question is a tough one. Even the highest living entity in this universe could not answer it. So Lord Hamsa appeared. But Brahma himself has no material cause. He is the cause of creation of all living beings and is the greatest amongst all the demigods. Yet even Brahma is always suffering agitation of the mind due to the duties he has to perform. Therefore, when he was questioned by his sons, headed by Sanak, who were born from his mind, about the means for driving away desires for sense gratification, he was unable to give them an answer. In order to receive some insight into this matter, he took shelter of the Lord, who appeared before him in the form of the swan incarnation, Lord Hams. So Brahma himself actually is a self-realized soul, but he's got a lot to do, right? He's actually also the personality in charge of the mode of passion because he's in charge of creation. So he's a busybody. So sometimes when you're so busy, you may not have time to sit and analyze a particular spiritual topic. And then Brahma asked for help, and Lord came and helped him. So Hamsa arrived. The sages, placing Brahma in the lead, worshipped the Lord's lotus feet and asked him who he is. The Lord answered. Oh yeah, this is a really incredible answer. If you believe that I am also a Jiva soul, then there is no ultimate difference between us, since all souls are ultimately one without individuality. Then how is your question possible or appropriate? So the question was asked, and Lord Hans, he analyzed the question and he criticized, in effect, the question. What's the point of that question? If we're all souls, ultimately we're all similar to each other. But if you are, by asking me, you're referring to the material body, then I must point out that all material bodies are constituted of 5 gross elements. So there was no point to that question either. If you're thinking that I'm this body, why are you wasting your time? Because everybody's body is made up of the same 5 gross elements. Thus, you should have asked, in that case, who are you 5? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. And as all material bodies are constitutionally, essentially of the same elements, then your question is meaningless. Since there would be no purpose in distinguishing one body from another. Thus, it appears that in asking my identity, you are merely speaking words without any real meaning or purpose. Often, Guru Maharaj used to be in a similar mood. You'd ask him a question, and he immediately he would realize that this question actually is a meaningless question. You're just making conversation. Don't waste my time. Anyway, then Hamsa Avatar continues. Having understood my transcendental nature, the self-realized souls give up both the material mind and its objects. Waking, sleeping, and deep sleep are the 3 functions of the intelligence caused by the modes of material nature. Whilst the living entity remains a witness to them all. So while we're waking, while we're awake, while we're sleeping, while we're in deep sleep, we're still that one person. Although the body is going through different transformations, we're still that one person. We're simply the witness to everything that's happening. But then Amsa says, I am the 4th stage of consciousness, and an intelligent person remains situated in me, who is beyond the functions of material consciousness. One should fix the mind on me alone. If, however, one instead continues to see many different values and goals in life, then, although apparently awake, one is actually dreaming due to incomplete knowledge. So Hamsa Avatar is actually putting it as it is to the sages, to Brahma. simply by them asking, who are you? Oops. While awake, the living entity enjoys, with all of his senses, the fleeting characteristics of the material body and mind. While dreaming, he enjoys similar experiences within the mind. So while we're awake, we're enjoying with the body and the mind. While we sleep, we're just having similar experiences with the mind alone. And in deep sleep, all such experiences merge into ignorance because we've completely forgotten ourselves by deep sleep. I remember one time Guru Maharaj said to a devotee who was sleeping very deeply, deep sleep, not good. By remembering and contemplating the succession of wakefulness, dreaming and deep sleep, the living entity can understand that he is one throughout the three stages of consciousness and is transcendental. Thus he becomes the Lord of the senses. So this is simply understanding how our body works and how we are the same living entity through all the different transformations of the body. With this sharpened sword of knowledge acquired by logical reflection and the instructions of the sages and Vedic literatures, cut off this false ego, which is the breeding ground of all doubts, and worship me, who am situated within the heart. So that's the essence of knowledge. Worship the Lord, and ignorance will be destroyed in time. The spirit soul by nature exists in a single state of pure consciousness. That's the original nature. However, in this world, the modes of nature divide the soul's consciousness into normal wakefulness, into dreaming, into deep sleep, dreamless sleep. However, by experiencing the happiness of the soul, one should give up material speaking and activities. If sometimes one must observe the material world, one should remember that it is not ultimate reality. It is not the ultimate reality. And therefore one should give it up. By constant remembrance up until the time of death, one will not again fall into illusion. One who is perfect in self-realization does not notice whether the material body is sitting or standing. So we had that. That was the verse. This was the verse that we recited right at the beginning. Indeed, if by God's will the body is finished, or if by God's will he obtains a new body, a self-realized soul does not notice, just as a drunkard man does not notice the situation of his outward dress. A self-realized soul who is awakened to the absolute reality and who is thus highly situated in perfect stage of yoga will never again surrender to the material body and its manifold manifestations, knowing it to be just like a body visualized in a dream. So the question was, how can the man get away from sense gratification and fix the mind on the Supreme? So Lord Hans is giving the idea how to do it by analyzing oneself and seeing that we are transcendental to the body by looking at the different states that the body exists in: wakefulness, sleep, deep sleep. My dear Brahmins, I have now explained to you the confidential knowledge of Sankhya, by which one philosophically distinguishes matter from spirit, and of Astanga Yoga, by which one links up with the Supreme. Please understand that I am the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and that I have appeared before you desiring to explain your actual religious duties. Krishna said, so now Krishna is talking to Uddhava again. Thus, all of the doubts of the sages headed by Sanaka were destroyed by my words. So this was the end of this chapter. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any questions, any comments? Very philosophical. Yes?
Yes, Prabhuji, yes, I agree. Very philosophical and quite deep to understand, isn't it?
It is. It's
These
chapters are highly philosophical. But it's interesting how he's explaining that just observe your own body and you just look at this from the Sankhya point of view. You will be able to distinguish between how the body works, matter, and how the spirit works. So that's very interesting. So we have these three types of consciousness: wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. So sleeping.
That makes sense. That makes some sense.
Yeah.
That when you're in deep sleep, you are just forgetting everything. You don't.
Yeah.
The dreamless sleep, you are like unconscious.
Like unconscious.
Yes.
But you're still there. You're still in the body.
There. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a different state.
Yeah. Another thing is to separate the mind from the senses, isn't it?
Yes, and that there's a lot of talk about that, especially as we're going through this 11th canto, how it's explaining how one can detach oneself from the senses, and in quite a bit of detail actually as we go along.
Yeah. One question. Why did he appear in the form of a Hansa? Hansa is pure white. Maybe Shut Tattva and
yeah.
Maybe.
I've heard somewhere that swans actually then they can pick out the nectar like pearls. Like if you have a crow, that will always go for rubbish, but a swan will always go for the good things, the best things, and pick that out from all the rubbish.
Good one. Yeah, good.
I also read somewhere that is it a Hans or some other bird? Or I think it had mentioned Hans, which I could not understand. They're very clever. They are standing on one foot, looking calmly, and as long as they see the target, immediately dive into the water and catch their target.
Those are storks.
Storks, yeah.
Oh, that's a stork.
Yeah.
And who are cunning, who are not very kind. They're cunning.
Yes.
Okay.
Bakasur was was an example.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're little.
They're little, yes. Little.
Yes, there's one question. I mean, when we go to sleep, the body is dead, isn't it?
Yeah. It's dead anyway.
Because
that's right.
you don't know which world you are. Or
That's it.
It's just you're fast asleep. But when you wake up in the morning, it's completely different. When you're sleeping, you are dreaming. You think, oh my God, where is this? Where you are? You think like that. But when you go on to sleep, it's completely you are gone. That's it.
Yeah. And this is exactly what the Bhagavatam this chapter is explaining. When you are awake, because you're so attached to this material world, you're in a sort of a state of dreaming because you're trying to enjoy yourself in a temporary world.
Yes.
But when you're sleeping, again, this time it's with your mind, because when you're awake, it's body and mind. But when you're sleeping, it's just with the mind. The mind is, as you said, taking you into a certain dream. And you think, hey, what's going on here? And you're wondering.
Yeah, it's just sometimes you also think, oh my God, anyway,
That's
I
right.
won't talk too much. Carry on with
and then there's the third type of consciousness, which is dreamless sleep, deep sleep. And that's where you completely lose yourself. As you said, the body is pretty dead at that time. It's dead anyway, but your consciousness level is so low that you don't even dream. You don't even know aware of anything.
Yeah. One more. This is not the question. This is just to see how was your Ram Navami.
Oh, it's good. Yeah.
You all had a nice time.
Yeah, we did. I'll show you some pictures afterwards.
Okay, you put down in the thing, yeah? Or are you going to show here?
Yeah, we can show you, I think.
All right.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.